Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Well said. Are students delayed because of the lunch?
Yes, sir, I think.
Okay.
I am messaging people to join.
Okay. Do you have any classes from 3 to 4 p.m.?
No, sir. It's already free.
Okay. Okay. Maybe what I can do is, I can start the video by the time the other people join. This is so we were here, collect requirements.
As a part of collect requirement process, what do I have to do really? So this is a process where we basically ensure that we gather all the needs and the requirements of customers, which will help in meeting the objectives of the project that we're working on. So it could be manufacturing some product that you are working on, or coming up with some result or some process or some service that you're trying to launch in market. So all of that could be a part of the collect requirements, depending on the kind of objective that you have defined. So this will certainly
Okay, so that was the definition of collect requirements, and the next one is define scope.
or scope management plan. Once we've gathered requirements, then based on the requirements, we have to define scope. So how do we do that, and what happens largely as part of this? So as part of the defining scope, you would see that basically we're trying to describe what we're going to build, what we're going to create as part of this project and product. So whatever the product outcome or result that you're trying to achieve here, now you're going to define them together with stakeholders, and you're
Okay, so we have seen the second definition, and I'm joining from a mobile as well so that I can look at the list of the participants and close my WhatsApp. And what is the third process is the WBS.
project that we're working on. It's time now for us to break down that into smaller packages, which will make our life easy to work on. And that's part of your create WPS. So WBS is your work breakdown structure. And as a part of work breakdown structure, what you try to achieve really, when we break down work into something which is more manageable, something which is easy to estimate, something which is easy to plan, and most importantly, based on this work breakdown structure, we actually come up with dependencies, we come up with
Okay, and let's see one more
etc.
process.
Now, all this information is going to be really useful when I do the next process, which is about validating scope. So, validating scope is all about understanding whatever the deliverables that I have completed, whether those deliverables meet acceptance criteria or not. So, there is something called as the acceptance process, and this acceptance process will certainly help us in increasing the probability of final product, service, or result acceptance. And this is clearly defined between you and the customers. For each deliverable that we are producing, what is the acceptance criteria? So if it is a high level design document that I'm producing on the project,
Okay, so I'm just going through the processes. We'll visit these processes, but
is it
because
clearly? This comes as a part of the monitoring process. And this is where we try to monitor status of the project and product scope. And whatever the changes that are there needs to be incorporated to the scope baseline, which is maintained throughout the project. As we've discussed already, that once we have defined the scope, we have to also come up with the scope baseline, right? So once it is baseline, once it is agreed, over and above, if there is any change, it has to go through a change process. So that's the part of your control scope and monitoring. What kind of inputs I need to?
okay. Uh, so as I've already said, every knowledge area will consist of a set of processes. So the processes in the scope management were plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, uh, work breakdown structure, validate scope, and control the scope. And I have shared an older version uh, here yesterday that has a list of the processes. And if I see in the scope, where's the scope? Uh, Time, cost, quality, scope. Scope is here. You will not be able to read it, but doesn't matter. I am reading out it out to you. So all the processes are listed: plan, scope management, control, collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, validate scope, control scope, and validate scope and control scope. They are in a different process group. They're not under execution. They are under monitoring and controlling process group. Okay, back to the PPT. And before I go to the PPT, we were doing one exercise yesterday. Let us continue with that. And here is my worksheet. And before, this is just how many students are there today? We have five, right? Mohit, Nalini, Purva, Ramya, Shubham. Okay, I hope you can read this. I have zoomed in.
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of my friends, who is a project manager of an external product, is facing an interesting Dilemma. He asked me a question, and I thought I will post it to a wider audience. Their current project depends on an internal resource, and two different groups are asking for the same resource. Only one can get the resource. So, how best to handle this situation? So, this is a conflict situation. This is a contention for the resource. Both projects are exercising their right on the resource. And why is this situation happening? Because that resource has got skills which are a little unique. So he or she is the only available resource with that skill, and it is required by the two projects and at the same time. So, what are the possible solutions? Solutions may not be acceptable, but what are they? what should the company or the management do?
I did not understand the question. I'm reading it again. Just give me a minute.
Okay, see, for example, there are two projects, both are developing websites, uh, but
Okay.
different websites.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of website development, they require a designer, somebody who can design the screens, a GUI person, graphical user interface designer. But there is only one person with that skill in the company. But there are two websites to be done, and there are two separate projects, and both of them have to be delivered in the same time. So, what should be done? How do you resolve?
You'll have to choose between either of the project,
Okay, but
which is
on what
more
basis?
important, or
So, that would mean one of the projects does not get delivered in time. So, what should be the
yes.
basis? Should we toss a coin?
No, sir.
Then what?
We'll have to decide which one is more important or profitable or.
Okay. So, that is one of the possible solutions.
Mhm.
What are the other possibilities?
You could try and manage to do both.
No, please repeat.
You can try and manage to do both. You could
Uh,
ask for help also.
okay. See, one thing that could be done is you can pay extra to that guy and you can ask him to work extra hours. In place of eight
Mm-hmm.
hours, he will work 12, and then he will give 6 hours to each project.
Yeah.
What else?
Sir, I would like to add one more point.
Yes.
As she told, the priority is the best, and also we can see the duration of the both the period is how we can adjust as per the time also. So the duration of the project can be the matters also to complete and adjust the task.
Let's assume that duration is more or less the same. Otherwise, it is,
Okay,
otherwise there will not be a contention or a conflict. Okay, so other thing
okay,
what can be done is that if there is something which can be done before the design, then the one of the projects will do that other activity first, and they will do the design, not design in the sense the graphical user design, graphical user interface design later. That is one of the solutions. One other solution is uh, you identify, I mean, you meaning the company identifies another resource who has got little knowledge in this area, and he is assisted by the senior guy, and then both of them work on both the projects. So the simpler task in both the projects is given to the junior guy, and the complex task is done by the senior guy in both the. So this was a good example, and so I thought, there's uh, it provides a good insight into conflict resolution in a project situation when there is a resource conflict. Resource conflict keeps happening all the time in services organization like IBM and TCS. Okay, so we were on collect requirements. That was the second process. And before we go on to the collect requirements, there is one more thing, and that what happens is, uh, we had covered this, but we are going to do exercise also in collect requirements. Uh, the PIMBOK.
Sir,
And
your voice is breaking, sir.
1 second. Better now, or is still weak?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's better.
Okay. The PIMBOK uh, does not take this question head on. What is the difference between collect requirements or requirements and scope statement? So both are the processes
Okay.
in this particular knowledge area: collecting requirements and scope statement. Uh,
Okay.
so I have given a discussion thread, and you can go to the discussion thread. I have posted in the Telegram, and I hope all of you are there on the Telegram.
Yes, sir.
The
Yes.
uh, I'm talking from the discussion thread as well as from my experience. The scope is written from the perspective of the project manager, and the requirements, the language of the requirements document is from the perspective of the customer or the user or the client. So the way both the things are written, it is different, but ultimately they will mean the same thing. There's one-to-one mapping or one-to-many mapping, and one more difference that is there is scope is a higher level statement. So one scope statement, or rather the entire scope statement, might be not more than a page. Very rarely it will be more than a page, but the requirements document can be 10 pages, 50 pages, 100 pages. Requirements is a more granular specification. So the scope can be stated upfront, or the scope can also be updated as a summary of the requirements after the requirements are collected. Uh, okay, so now let us go to our sheet, and let's do an example of requirements. Now, requirements typically are stated by the uh, customer or the user, and it won't be a single person giving all the requirements. There are different modules, the different areas of the product. uh, Different people would be giving the requirements, different departments would be giving the requirements. So let us say we have collected the requirements for what. So can you suggest me something? Shall I say uh, what would be an easy thing to have the requirements for midday, lunch, packets? Let us say students, when there is no canteen. So when there is no canteen, what happens? Lunch has to be ordered. So a
Yes, sir.
single vendor has to be given the order for all the students and maybe faculty. So assume the requirements have already been collected. So if they have been collected, what would they be? Shall
So deciding the menu for the week.
That is the work breakdown structure. That is the work that you're going to do. Now you have uh, maybe it means the same thing, but you have to don't state it as a task.
Okay.
Yeah, state it as what do you demand from the vendor.
Uh, the package should be delivered on time, like during the lunch hours.
Okay, on time delivery. What else?
Uh, Menu shouldn't be repeated. Will that count?
Okay, yes. uh, Menu rotation. What else? They can be,
Customers would like
we can put
hygiene,
up. Okay, yes, hygiene. I hope I
considering
got
this
it right.
situation, it's important.
Yeah, you can have at least two options. The for the menu, two options daily. What else?
Decent proportion of the meal.
Okay, I would say good proportion or whatever. A good portion size or good for one person or a filling lunch.
The taste matters as well, no?
Packing, you mean?
No, the taste,
Okay, okay, tasty.
uh,
Oil free,
Oil free, okay.
healthy.
Nutrition,
healthy,
value,
nutrition. Yeah.
nutritional. Okay, so we got good enough points for. So these are the requirements. I mean, obviously, in a real life situation, it won't be just a keyword. You will write couple of sentences on each, and so we'll go to the next point out here, and it can this document can be 50 pages as well.
Okay.
When you're writing business requirement, now this is a kind of a personal requirement. But if it's a business requirement, it is things are going to be quite complex. And do you know why I'm skipping these pages? I have already told you I will be skipping these, but why? Because if you
So
don't remember,
you already said that ITTO you'll be skipping.
yes, yeah, ITTO is not going to be considered from the exam perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It is only for
Yeah.
reference, so that
Yes, sir.
if you want to complete the picture, you can go through it. If the definition of the process gives you an incomplete picture, take a look at the other slides.
Mm.
So now we are in the looking at the third process, which is define the scope. So scope is now I think the English word scope and this scope, they're pretty much the same. So scope is a process of giving a description of the project and product. Uh, I would say project deliverables out here. Description of the project deliverables or a scope of the project deliverables and product. So we can take another example. So now in this case, uh, let's take a car, car that is required. Let us say it is a subcompact SUV. What can be the high level scope elements? If you take an example of any subcompact SUV.
So, is it for the company or any
No, no,
our requirements?
no, no. It's now we are talking from the company perspective. So we are not talking about the car scope. So, for example, high ground clearance. So SUVs will typically come with a high ground clearance. what else
Mm.
will the manufacturer like Tata provide? Tata or Hyundai or Kia? Of course, there are others. Mahindra is there and Maruti is
Fuel
there.
efficient.
Car, scope, uh, fuel efficiency within a range, I would say, because nobody expects
Okay.
efficiency, but the users would be provided a range.
Okay.
It is going to be a little difficult, and uh, though you should remember the definition of the scope. Scope is the product project deliverables description or the product features, and uh, uh, requirements is the functionality, features, description uh, from the as given
Good,
by the users.
good quality interior and exterior.
Quality interior. Okay, so that examples are sufficient. Sometimes you may consider to be the same, but with the way you write it, the perspective changes. One is from the perspective of the project manager, and the other is from the perspective of the user. And requirements are a more detailed and a granular thing. So if the users normally don't give a requirement for a car, but requirements might be collected from them. And when are the requirements collected? The requirements are collected when there is a auto show. In India, we don't have very high level shows. They generally done in Europe, which can be done in Geneva or Germany or sometimes in all the major cities of the USA. And that time, when the visitors to the show they pass by a model of a car, they may enter into a discussion with the representative, and they might start discussing the car features. So they might say that, you know, uh, future proofing of the car. What do you mean by future proofing? Future proofing with respect to mobile charging. So at present, there are some models that have wireless charging, but maybe after a year, every mobile is going to have wireless charging, or at least 75% of the mobiles. So
Mm.
they might tell the manufacturers to provide an inbuilt wireless charging. 10 years back, even the mobile charging was not there, or 15 years back. But nowadays, USB ports have become common, but wireless charging platform is not there. So even EcoSport and Tata Nexon, they do not have a wireless charging. They might say that they might want to borrow features from the luxury cars. So when features are introduced by the luxury cars, after 10 years or after 5 years, the non-luxury cars implement the same features when the cost of those features comes down. So I have seen,
So, car can have an access to the smartphone, like the on the dashboard of the car.
yeah, connectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cars have started implementing connectivity. They may ask for specifications in the tires. Uh, it can be in terms of the width, it can be in terms of the radius of the tire, size
Mm.
of the tire, 16 inches, 15 inches, 17 inches, and then the width of the tire, and then there are some more parameters, one or two more. So that can be from the requirements perspective, more granular thing. Okay. Not a very perfect example because to make it perfect, I would need to write down full blown sentences and paragraphs. But I'm just pointing the direction where the requirements uh, gathering will go. Okay. So one of the tasks that I would, so here there's a comparison between project charter and project scope statement. Uh, it wasn't really required because there are two
Shubham,
draft.
Shubham, can you please turn off your mic? There's a lot of background noise.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a crackle noise. There are two drastically different things. So there's a little confusion between scope and requirement, but not between charter and scope statement. So charter is the mandate given by the top management or the sponsor of the project, uh, which authorizes the project team to start a project, and they give the nomination of the project manager. But we haven't studied project charter as yet. It comes under the knowledge area of integration. Okay, work breakdown structure. Let's look at the definition. So, can somebody read this? Work breakdown
Uh,
structure.
create work, create work breakdown structure is a process of subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. This we did yesterday, sir, for a party.
Yeah, but did we do an example? I this was a yesterday's sheet. We did requirements, but we did RTM.
So we did it
Uh,
for the farewell party. Do you remember? Like
okay, okay. Where
subdividing the work.
uh, has it gone to the right? Or I must have erased, you know, deleted that part. Okay, fine. So work breakdown structure we have done,
Yes, sir.
and so that brings. Uh, there's an example, and I can, if you want to do it in a more neat way, a proper hierarchical way, a tool can be used, and I will just briefly show an example. Uh, a PowerPoint can be a tool to some extent, if you want to do it at a high level. I'll, because this has got organization chart inbuilt into it. I'm going to do insert smart art and hierarchy, and I'll use the first one, which is the organization chart. Okay, and so we did for the farewell party. I'm not putting down the nomenclature, and so the let me delete this object. The first one we said system, not the first, but whatever, but at the high level.
Mm-hmm.
Next was at the high level was catering
Catering, yeah.
and communication.
Communications.
Anything else was there at the high level? I mean, the second level.
Mm,
Okay, doesn't matter.
there was
So
one more decoration, but I don't know if we can consider it as high level.
we can call it, venue.
Yeah.
So let's only will go to the next level only for catering.
Okay,
And
yeah.
in order to go to the next level, I will put an indentation. I'll say demote.
Mm.
And so what is there in
Veg, non-veg.
so it was menu.
Menu.
Okay, what else was there in the catering? Budget was there, I think.
Budget was there. So
Uh,
only these two things were there.
and within the menu,
Okay.
I'll again going to demote it just to show
Mm-hmm.
how this was, how we can have a hierarchy. And there's a non-veg. So this is representing a hierarchical view. But of course, if you want to depict 10 levels, then PowerPoint is not the tool. It is good enough for, you know, maybe 5 levels or 6 levels. Otherwise, the font will become, it'll become very congested.
Yeah.
And let me see, for some of the things, we can use a tool called plant text. I'm not sure whether this will support text.com. This is a free tool, and let me see if there is anything. Activities. This is a flow diagram, class diagram. Let me see. You can crudely use a class diagram for a Word and Windows, but let me see if there's anything more. Components. No. Object GUI sequence. No. Use cases. I'm not able to find a good diagramming technique for this part. Uh, but I mean, you can crudely use the uh, you know class diagram. Yeah, you can manipulate it into a hierarchy. Okay, so we are done with this
Mm.
here, and so we finished with a sample work breakdown structure. Hope statement. So I'll open the next one then.
Okay.
After this. And I have also assigned a quiz, uh, and the quizzes might refer to the ITTO. So in that case, you can look up the content or the material and then answer those questions. So that way, you'll also give a reading to the material.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I was a little doubt which one to start next. Let me open the syllabus. Resource management is there. We can put that because that is an easy topic. Uh, so, from a resource management perspective, the word resource refers to both men and material. Though, in terms of uh, the content, of the curriculum content, it largely refers to the main part of the resources. So, and first process in all the knowledge areas, almost
So
all the
will
knowledge.
the money part come in this resource? There are three ends, right? Men, money, and material.
Money is in the costing.
But it's
Money
a
is in
kind of
the
resource, right?
cost management knowledge area.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So the first process is typically, we have seen in the scope as well. So the first process is plan scope management, which gives output to the scope management plan. So in case of resource, is planning resource management, you can say, or project resource management. Okay, so uh, this is the first part is always the process is always the management process. So can somebody read this out for me?
Yes, sir. Project resource management is a process to identify, acquire, and manage the resources needed for successful completion of the project.
Okay, so resource management knowledge area is the set of processes to identify, acquire, and manage the resources. So let us go ahead. Uh, I'll repeat what is tailoring. So tailoring is whenever we are uh, getting the templates and the processes from PIMBOK, we need not implement in our organization uh, with their face value. We cannot blindly copy that, because all those are written from a generic project structure perspective. But every project structure, every project team, every organization would be different. So tailoring is required. Tailoring is customization. So there will always be deviation from the PIMBOK, or for that matter, any other worldwide standards of project management. Nothing will ever be applied blindly. Adaptive is agile project management environments. Okay, so we are coming to the first process. So the way we had it in scope, where the first process was plan scope management, the first process is plan resource management. Can you,
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Planned resource management is a process of defining how to estimate, acquire, manage, and use the team and physical resources. Key benefit: it establishes the approach and level of management effort needed for managing project resources.
okay. So some examples of uh, now this would be the output of would be a resource management plan, and some of the contents could be how to estimate. So when you're estimating, uh, some simple things could be uh, whether you are taking a 5-day work week or a 6-day work week, whether you are including vacation time in this or you're not including the vacation time in this, you are doing a internal acquisition or you're doing a external hiring, because if it is external hiring, the lead time is 2 to 3 months. And similarly, so there'll be a lot of guidelines. And as I said, in a large organization which does projects repetitively, this document would be existing in the repository. It will be an asset repository, and the project team will make 5 or 10% changes and then make it a fresh new document. So uh, the management plans, they are always about how to execute the rest of the processes within that knowledge area. So it could be resource management plan, it could be scope management plan, it could be cost management plan. So the naming convention is kind of predictable. So you can see the output is resource management plan, the main output.
Mm.
And there will be generic outputs, so which are not outputs, but these are updates. So assumptions log, risk register, they always keep getting updated. So most of the processes, they will end up updating the assumptions and the risk register. Okay.
Kiran,
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
estimate activity resources is a process of estimating team resources and the type of quantities of and the type and the quantities of material, equipment, and supplies necessary to perform project work. Key benefit: it determines the type, quantity, and characteristics of resources required to complete the project.
Okay. So let's take a example. We'll do find out. Uh, though we don't have a work breakdown structure, and we don't have a activity
Mm,
duration calculations done, but still we'll do some resource calculations with the
mhm.
hypothetical example. Where is how do okay? So we'll take an example of website, and we take a designer, and what else? A developer. We have a tester, and we have a business analyst. Four major roles, and of course there is a PM, project manager, and so I let me first check if there is a no, there is template available for this. No, let me close this. Um, estimate activity resources, resource requirements. Okay. Where did the template go? Yes. Might as well change the location.
So for a simpler example, correct me if I'm wrong, like as you said in resource, you can allocate an internal or you can hire an external. So for an institution like us, we have internal faculties as well, but we hire external faculties for our special languages like French or German, consider like that. That is the type of resource
Yes.
management, right?
Yes. Yes. Correct. Um, uh, so resource requirement. Okay. What else is there? Not a very relevant template. This is a lot more English out here. I wanted to have some calculations done. Okay. This is, for example, designer will work, let's say, for 40 hours. Well, I'll just put 40. Developer will work for maybe 200. Excel will work for 50 or 60. PA is 40 and PM is maybe 200. And therefore, this guy is like 1 week. By converting into week, 8 5 is 40, and this is like 5 weeks. This is like 1.5 weeks, and this is like in 1 week, and this is again 5 weeks, and I'm just creating a template on the fly. Pause, weeks. Okay, and then um, you can say skills level. Uh, Maybe you can say high for this, and I would say mid for this, low for this, and mid for this, and maybe high for this, something like that. So that is why I was trying to look up a template to see if there is any we can avoid reinvention the wheel out here. So there can be a different details captured in the resource requirements. Here we captured the duration, so there will be many other parameters that can be uh, you know, um, involved. So if we put down a schedule, so this is week one, and I will put a so where does the BA come in? BA comes in the first week. Where does the PM come in? So PM will probably come in the entire part.
Mhm.
So I'm going to merge this and I'm going to color code this and I'm going to center this just to indicate. And BA is only here. I'll use a different color. So this way I can have a schedule representation of the resource requirement, in which part the resource is required. Tester is out here somewhere. Though I can't make it 1.5, but it's good enough for. And the developer also will be more or less throughout and merge it, center it, and color code. And my developer is here. So this is another details that can be captured in resource requirements, but it would be linked to the schedule as well. So this cannot be done independently of the schedule, and it cannot be done independent of the estimation of the risk. So I am not sure if the inputs indicate that. So it does say about the cost estimates. So cost estimate is not just money. In this case, money is indirect. Money is by way of salaries. But my cost estimate out here is the time. How much time do you need from a given resource? So
Okay.
once again, so unless you know that you need the project manager for 200 hours, 5 weeks, I will not have this picture. And uh, This is one of the representations that can be there for a resource requirement, though not always. It also, on a larger project, on a real life project, uh, this cannot be done manually. This will require a software to be done, but uh, this is one example of a depiction of resource requirement based upon the inputs becoming available, estimates for the tasks, and cost estimates for the resources. Okay, next point. Yeah, can you read this?
Develop, yeah.
Yeah.
Develop team is a process of improving competencies, team member interaction, and the overall team environment to enhance project performance. Key benefits. It results in improved teamwork, enhanced interpersonal skills and competencies, motivated employees, reduced so can you help me out?
Attrition.
Attrition, and improved overall project performance.
So attrition is people leaving the project or the company.
Okay.
So when they resign, because
Mhm.
they don't like the work atmosphere. So when we say attrition out here, it refers to voluntary attrition. Uh,
Mhm.
Attrition can always be management initiated as well. So whenever there is a layoff happening, that attrition is management initiated.
Okay.
So develop team is uh, empowering the team with skills and competencies and teamwork so that they can perform better on the project. So, what can be an example of developing a team? Straightforward topic this is.
Nothing's
Simple,
coming in my mind right now.
a simple example
Developing
is
a team.
providing training to the team on different skills area.
Mhm.
People might need training on
So,
Word and PowerPoint. They might require training on any application they're using. It could be Oracle Financials or HRMS. They might require communication, training in soft skills and business
Mhm.
communication. Uh, it can be anything. People, they might require training in uh, social media. So, uh, whenever a project team is being constituted, uh, we will never have a perfect fit into the project team. And the reason for that is uh, you can, if you keep waiting for the perfect candidate,
Mhm.
you will wait for a very long time and the project will be delayed. So rather than
Yeah.
have a delay, get the imperfect candidate and train him.
And training. Yeah.
uh, because the rest of the world is not going to be sitting idle just for your project to start. And as soon as your project starts, they are ready for onboarding. Everybody is already onboarded into some project or other. So only the people who are available, who are on bench, can join you. So you have to take what is available. So therefore, training your team members with skills, competencies, uh, and anything else that is required is what is then the developed team.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Understood.
Next is manage team. You can read that.
Yeah. Manage team is the process of tracking team member performance, providing feedback, resolving issues, and managing team changes to optimize project performance. Key benefit: it influences team behavior, manages conflict, and resolves issues.
Okay. So we will close out here,
Okay,
and
sir.
you can start working on the first assignment that I've given
Yes, sir.
for the project teams. Okay. Yeah, ठीक है.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Har Ramya, sir, Ramya. Ramya.